Hi everyone, welcome to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions and professionals, how history intersects with education, culture, and the world around us. I'm Karen, your host of Historically Speaking. Clay Smith is our guest today, and we're really happy to have him. And he recently became the Chief of Literary Initiatives at the Library of Congress. So that means he leads year-round literary programs, including the National Book Festival, and he most recently served as literary director and one of the founders of the San Antonio Book Festival. Smith, who's also a journalist, was previously editor-in-chief of Kirkus Reviews and the literary director of the Texas Book Festival, where he worked with former First Lady Laura Bush, who also co-founded the National Book Festival in 2001. And he's done a lot of really great work with and libraries, and he also currently works closely with the Library of Congress's many great programs, which I had the privilege of attending and helping out with this past September, which is actually this month, so that's pretty cool. But thank you so much, Clay, for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio or anything else you like to, I guess, elaborate on the National Book Festival?
Yeah, the bio sounds good. Smart. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to get more background on the National Book Festival, because I'm kind of obsessed with it with the poster, but I don't know if like everyone knows about it. The National Book Festival is kind of this one day or not really one day event since it now spans many awesome like virtual events as well, where we kind of have a lot of really great authors from all walks of life and who discuss books that they've written about their backgrounds and about just their communities and all sorts of really great topics at a convention center or where it was previously on the National Mall. And it's a really great festival with, a huge number of attendees who just come and enjoy the book festival and enjoy the novels and books that are there, which is super awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without further ado, I'm just gonna get started with my questions. I guess since our first or your first National Book Festival was barely a month ago, what was it like to kind of run the National Book Festival and kind of do a lot of that coordinating and behind the scenes work?
Um, Gosh, it was sort of strangely thrilling. This is my first, as you said, like I've worked at book festivals before, the Texas Book Festival and the San Antonio Book Festival. But this is my first time working in the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sort of different systems, and it's just a much bigger festival
Mm-hmm.
than the ones that I have worked at before. So different sort of relationship with the bookseller than we've had at past book festivals that I've worked at. Just in the sense of there's a formal government contract with them. We didn't really have that at the past book festivals I worked at, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds boring, but it is actually quite important. Politics and Prose is our bookseller, and they did a great job. So really love working with them. And let's see, just the whole scale of it is big.
Mm-hmm.
There's I come from book festival. Most book festivals in America are pretty small nonprofits. They may be part of a university or just their own, independent nonprofit. But of course, when you work with a nonprofit, that tends to mean that you work pretty hard, and there's not always, enough human resources to go around. So,
Mm-hmm.
but here at the library, there's many people involved in the book festival. I'm really the one working on the writers and what kind of ideas and panels and events we're presenting to the public. But
Mm-hmm.
I've never worked at a book festival that had so many people working on it. And so I had to learn how to you know, um, communicate not just with the public who would be attending the festival through our Office of Communications, but really all the people in the library.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a learning curve for me. But in terms of what a literary director does for a book festival, it's actually very similar to
Mm-hmm.
my past jobs, just in the sense that, I'm me and the staff of Literary Initiatives, which is my department here at the library, we're thinking about what are the issues, not just in, let's say, nonfiction books that might be, that people might be concerned about right now, but um, let's say, fiction, what are the novels that people are reading? What is the poetry that people are reading?
Mhm.
What in children's books, what are the trends in children's books? How can we bring the most beloved writers to Washington for the
Mhm.
festival? Because it's important to remember that the festival is a big gift. It's free.
Mhm.
We don't charge people to attend. You don't have to buy a book. Um, and so, we want to make sure that we're presenting both writers who are well known, but also some debut writers who we think are really great and who the audience might want to listen to. So,
That sounds really cool. Like there's definitely like a really big balance kind of factor where you definitely like you want to make sure that all different communities kind of have someone that they can relate to, and they're like, oh my gosh, like that's someone who looks like me who's on stage. And especially for a younger generation, I think that's like super important to see. And it was just a really great and very unique experience with definitely the different diversities of authors, which was super super cool.
well, thank you.
um, I wanted to ask about kind of like the lessons that you kind of took from the Texas Book Festival and from the San Antonio Book Festivals. How did you like take some of the lessons you learned there and kind of apply them to the National Book Festival? And yeah, like what was your experience with that, I guess?
Yeah. Well, one thing certainly, since I started in book journalism and being a literary director a long time ago, the conversation around questions of diversity and representation have really changed for the better. I mean, we're, people in my kind of position, being literary directors or book journalists, people who write about publishing, we're expected to be much more thoughtful about these questions of diversity and sort of equity. And the same goes for editors and publicists and salespeople and marketing people at publishing houses who are the ones deciding which books get published.
Mhm.
Um, so that's been a really wonderful thing to see, because as you said, like it's so important for people, both young readers and adult readers, to see their own stories reflected in the books that we feature at the festival. So that's been um, a really nice change. I mean, one thing that I had some time on the day of the festival this year, earlier in September, to walk around.
Mhm.
I didn't have a ton of time, but I walked around a little bit, and the Washington Convention Center is huge. It's like vast, and we didn't use every room, but we used a good number of them. And
Yeah.
that what we call the expo floor, which is the area where two of the children's stages, performance stages are, and all the book signings and our exhibitors are down there. It just felt like a really diverse crowd to me. Just sort of anecdotally, we don't have the numbers yet, but just sort of walking around, and it just felt like all different kinds of people were there, and that made me feel good. Um, so I'm proud of that. Let's see, what are the other lessons? Um, gosh, I think one important lesson, this is the first year that the National Book Festival has been back in person, that
Mhm.
this is happening really this year, with this fall, with book festivals around the nation, maybe earlier this year, where they took maybe 2 years to do virtual book festivals like we had done,
Mhm.
and now they're back in person, or
Mhm.
some kind of hybrid festival, some online and some in person. We really, I mean, something like 97% of our events were in person, only 2 were online and were shown at the festival for people who were there in person. And so another important lesson was just that, readers, it's important to remember, I think, that reading is, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, a solitary activity. And this question of creating a community of readers is a very different one than it is for, let's say, a music festival, where music fans of whatever kind are used to going to a concert venue and being around other music lovers. In the book world, it's not so much that way. And so it just was really inspiring to see how many people really wanted to be around other readers and, to be engaging with their favorite writers and getting books signed. And just, the pandemic taught us some really valuable things, I think. But now, hopefully, that the pandemic is ending.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it just is really nice to see that memory of what it's like to attend a book festival and how fun it is and how sort of inspired you can feel at the end of the day after, listening to smart people, writers talking about their ideas all day, can feel that just came right back for people. And that wasn't forgotten during the pandemic. So it's not that I was worried necessarily that it had, but it was nonetheless nice to see it confirmed, that people really do want to go to a book festival, and they'll go and attend and go to the events and, interact with other readers and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, I think with the quarantine and being online, we kind of had a sense of community online in a way. I know that one of my favorite authors who was actually at the National Book Festival, Chloe Gong, who wrote These Violent Delights, she had a huge TikTok following, or a TikTok community of readers who were, dissecting her book. But I definitely think that you're so right in the fact that, when it's in person, that's just another level of connection. And, getting to meet her and have her sign my book was just oh my gosh, this transcends what's ever on my screen and just feels so solid. And, it's just a different experience for sure.
Yeah, I mean, no, you raise a good point. It's different kinds of feelings of community between online and in person, and for someone who maybe can't attend the National Book Festival in person, or is, afraid of getting COVID, or, for whatever other reason they can't attend, that online community can feel really vital. It can feel just as crucial, and important to them as it does to someone who's at the festival in person. But yeah, it was nice to just have it confirmed that people do want to go to a big book festival and care about books still. So.
Yeah, that's really great. I think this is another question that has to do with lessons learned, I guess. What do you think are some valuable takeaways you had from this National Book Festival that you think you'll be sure to implement next year, or make sure to keep, or I guess change as well?
Well, I think that hybrid events or online only events will be with us for a while. I think the pandemic actually did a good thing for the book world in the sense that it caused people like literary directors like me and publishers to think about how to invigorate book events, which had really been, not always, but sort of static for a long time. And, in the beginning of the pandemic, it was just sort of let's just put 2 writers in conversation with each other on Zoom and hope that this works. And that's really, it was, the pandemic was so sudden feeling that it, that's all that people could do. So that's not a criticism. But
Mhm.
as we sort of lingered longer in the pandemic, you saw more creativity around how to make a digital only event really interesting and really compelling. And, maybe you add footage from that illustrates what a writer is talking about, or, you add music, or, there's all kinds of ideas.
Mhm.
So I think that, the creativity around hybrid events or digital events is really what I'm thinking about. And we tried to do that with our two online events this year, but we'll be thinking about that some more in the future.
Mhm.
Um, I think, I just did being my first year, being my first year, and how I was able to walk around a little bit, like I told you, I was able to see a little bit how people sort of use our venue and how they walk around, and they might, plan out their day.
Mhm.
Like, how do I get from this venue to that venue? I want to think about the physical space at our venue, and how do we make it work really well for people.
Mhm.
Um, so those are some of the things we'll be thinking about in the coming year for sure.
I think that's super cool. I think first of all, like, yeah, I think that from what I could see with the virtual kind of speakers, I know one of them was Ruby Bridges, wasn't really
Mhm.
sure who the other one was, but yeah, I saw it really cool that there was like an in-person moderator with the interview in the background. So I was like, oh, that's like a really interesting like duality of like both in-person and virtual hybrid. So I think yeah, I think that's like super cool. And I also agree about the physical space. I know like the state booths were super super popular on the expo floor. So like definitely considering all of these really great things and how people can access them, which was super super cool for sure.
Yeah. So just for people who don't know, the Library of Congress has these affiliates, these centers for the book, and we have one from every state, and plus some American territories, and they each get a little booth, like a sort of table area at the festival that they can decorate, and they talk about the beloved writers from that state, or the beloved books that come from that state. And there's one exercise in particular that's really popular, which is where there's a little sort of test, I guess, that kids get, where they try to get a piece of paper stamped from every single state, or every single booth. So you see these kids like running around, like
Yeah.
to get their stamps from every single state. So it's a great sort of show of national love for books. Each of those centers for the book really thinks about the books that matter to people from their state. And I had never seen anything like that before. So it was really great for me to see.
Yeah, I can confirm my sister was one of those people running around with the map, and it's like on my wall right now actually.
Right.
And yeah, like I think I kind of witnessed that like interest firsthand. I think she bought a book from like Kentucky about like fried chicken or something, which she living in New Jersey never would have really experienced if it was just kind of like, oh, within our little New Jersey bubble. So I
Uh-huh.
think like there was definitely a lot of like connections going on, and I think that the environment was really perfect for that for sure.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really nice to see.
I'm gonna just wrap up with one more question about kind of you and your own interest in books, I guess, rather than the National Book Festival. So were you always kind of interested in literature and like books? And kind of like how did you get your start or make your way into kind of the literary world, I guess?
Yeah, actually, as a kid, my grandmother used to pay me like a quarter if I would just sit down and read a book.
Oh my
I
God.
guess I was sort of like, a restless little kid. And but it really wasn't until a little bit later, like, middle school age, or a little bit younger, maybe elementary, when I started to get into books, and then it just sort of took off.
Mm.
And I was lucky to have a high school education where we weren't just we read the classics, but we were allowed to read more modern stuff.
Mm.
So that really kept me reading. I think it's so important to that in educational systems that we are, making reading challenging, but that we're also sort of meeting kids where they are and reading whatever, not maybe not whatever you're reading, but reading is crucial, and falling in love with the sort of process of reading and the experience of reading. So I feel really lucky to have done that. But I really started out in publishing and in books as a journalist.
Mhm.
I started out at the Austin Chronicle, the alternative news weekly in Austin, Texas, and really loved journalism and started interviewing writers and eventually became the book editor of that newspaper. And then I went to graduate school and learned more about journalism. I went for journalism. And then I really came back to Texas to be the literary director of the Texas Book Festival. And that's where I really learned a lot about the book festival world. I'm so thankful for that time and for being at that festival. It really taught me everything that I know. So that's, I've sort of had a career that's on the spectrum from book criticism and book journalism to being a
Mhm.
literary director. They're different jobs, but a part of the same kind of continuum.
Wait, that's so cool. I think it's really funny that you were trying to first like make bank with the 25-cent incentive to read books, and now you're like, hey, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but now I actually enjoy coordinating everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, in my job, I have to be a pretty wide reader, because at the book festival and in literary initiatives events year round, we do all kinds of books, children picture, like tomorrow night we're doing a picture book event. Then later this winter we'll do a book about autocratic dictatorial governments. So
Wide
there's all different
variety.
there's all different kinds of reading books that I do.
Yeah, I think that is super cool. And also, like, how you kind of, as you said, two kind of very different ideas of, involving books, but how they kind of eventually work together. That's something I personally am like trying to find maybe within the next few years of like what I want to do. And I think it's really cool to see that, you have a career kind of spanning around this one central love of books, which can take on so many different forms, which is super awesome for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that might be it for our conversation today. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the National Book Festival or any like links or any special shout outs you want to ensure I get my hands on or our audience knows?
Oh gosh, well, yeah. I mean, so you and I are talking on September 26th, 2022. In the next few weeks, we are going to be releasing the videos from the footage from this year's National Book Festival.
Mhm.
So I just encourage everybody to go to loc.gov. And you can find all of our videos there or on our YouTube channel. So if you weren't able to go to the festival, this is a great way to catch up on the latest in American ideas.
Yeah, and I'll link everything down below, which, I'm personally super excited to see as well, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being interested in this and for talking to me today, Karen.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me as well. It
Yeah.
was a great conversation. To everyone watching at home, thank you so much as well, and I will see you next time.